Uh, One observation that you might find interesting is if you do have employers or workplace authorities, some police officers, various people who are erratic and irrational in their temperament, finding out what their level of opposition is to see, I don't really understand what terms mean, like well, in the case of the Genesis story, evolution now being so proven in this day as to justify opposition, complete opposition to the creation story. The implications of it, once you've distanced yourself from a religious institution or two, you start to see that in believers they often have this proliferating interest in both crime fiction and the mainstream media's police state mentality. And it's a bit like when you have a kid pushing shapes into a cutout stencil until he figures out that the star fits in the star hole and the cylinder fits in the cylinder hole, and the cube fits in the square hole. But it's done with the implications of the belief system and not necessarily what's said at its face. I mean, the logical implications. What has to have been the case for the story to have merit, which, when we look at Genesis, is, and it's true of all the Abrahamic faith offshoots, is that if believed, then each citizen, the proposition, I hereby owe credit and gratitude for the existence of my entire species to rancid incest and copulative sex between siblings and mothers, and in the Garden of Eden, and you have that this is not called. It's not called what it is, which is disgusting incest and how to inbreed a bloodline out of history, but instead it's called created in the image of God. So it's decorated there. So you have a scope of the phenomenon spanning from Christian married couples, sexual health dysfunction issues, and Viagra sales to pedophilic priests, and their drives emerging from the same horrid bullshit origin story, which is, to my best understanding, true of all the three Abrahamic faith, the Abrahamics. Now, far from being mocked, and just as slavery is not mocked by any region of the Bible, Moses said it's stressed he freed some slaves from the custody of a pharaoh, but he did so only to motivate a suicide amongst many of them after they had trouble grappling with his new 10 rules. The Christians take and by the dogma of Jesus Christ being a savior, they purport to redefine the value of his death and what he stood for as being some kind of fulfillment or redignification of the focal wrong in that narrative is that a woman ate an apple. It's not, according to the narrative itself, it's not the logical implications of the inbreeding that would have had to have gone on. The Christians and Freemasons are at odds with one another over some small but not completely insignificant details, because both of their cases are contingent on there being a sum total veracity to the four Gospels concerning Jesus that appear in the New Testament of the Bible: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And so you do observe that these Christians go, well, how do I best serve Jesus the Lord? Oh, and then they gradually step out having, the simultaneous interest in things like psychology, wanting to believe in psychology, wanting to trust in the accounts of Christian-owned media networks, and their take on a criminal motive, which you'll notice it's often designed to fit like the block into the kid's toy. Oh, an incident when this fender was young, involving on a basis of anatomy and prepubescence and things like that. The fact that they want to draw like an A back in childhood here and then a B in someone's mid-20s, you want to read who's drafting these stories, because you got a pedo. Do you like to think that you don't think, or that Jesus saves you from thinking, because it's still pretty pedo. But yeah, there's this glorification of crime fiction, and there's really an unsolved one, the way I see it, staring them in the face in their own Bibles. If you have Mark's account written in AD 70, that's already 37 years of word of mouth talk after the crucifixion, before that's written. So can you imagine going to a court over a matter, and then there being an account of that court hearing, then 10 to 15 years later, two other people write off that account of your appearance and add that you flew over the Medicare building and you walked through the walls at KFC, and actually not even miracles that original, but miracles that are all over the pagan traditions for centuries before these Gospels of Jesus were ever written down. So yeah, the stupid tit for tat way that idiots like the two men I used to work for at Capital Chemist, the way that they think is that if I have to say what I have to say on matters such as I do, in the contrast and mutual dismissal of both of their pathetic cults, you don't need to. You don't really need to hear them go. It doesn't require introducing any gods to say, well, this looks like a murder-suicide concealed by an ancient monarchy that probably inbred itself out of living history. That's it's not the prettiest picture, but your holy books aren't supposed to have been designed for the sake of complimenting Gumby. Even you, admit to that, but so what it means is, when you watch, if you've got a low profile philanthropic fronting businessman Freemason going, yeah, I'm a Freemason, so what? What if you inspect the religion? It's incoherent. for him to, it's incoherent for the Freemasons to say Jesus was a martyr, as it is for the Christians to say that he was a savior, because their case involves a mashing together of an accepting, presumptuous acceptance of the veracity of all four of those Gospels, which for over 200 years now has been academically held, as they came to recognize this pattern, and they said, well, then, yeah, surely whoever wrote Matthew and Luke already had a copy of Mark. And then they meter out the 10 to 15 years later, and then the Gospel of John, which is like it's like the packaging. It's like the stand for the takeaway coffee to fit in. I would say that he was on drugs, but I don't think that little of drugs to say that whoever wrote the Gospel of St. John was under the influence of drugs. But his gospel is offensive, from my point of view. It's taking the embellishment of a murder-suicide cover-up to another level, where it's made out to be like the Abraham, Isaac, Jacob sacrificing of Isaac seen through to fruition. And it was all for you. It was all for your sake. And that's why Mambo have made this shirt for me, because Gary Kanza and Roger Toll are sexually deviant faggots. That's spelt with a PH, faggots. Commensurate with their license, stated B.Pharm, Bachelor of Pharmacy. So if you were to quote me calling them faggots, please use the correct spelling, which is PHAGGOTS. Thank you.